Kauai is very casual.
Yeah.
And so people know Bruce and they know Cynthia. And Vladimir, if you are able to just tell us a little bit about yourself, you know.
Sure. I was trained as journalist, and I worked in Russia as journalist in my early years of career. Then I decided to build an NGO, non-governmental organization, dealing with international security and with proliferation of nuclear weapons. And now it's 23 years after I built that organization. Now I have younger generation of people there, and I do much more work on educating young people, particularly in their MA program.
That's master's?
That's master's program, and we built a program dual degree between Russian and American universities, between Middlebury College in California and Moscow University of International Relations. So we have students who study, both Russians, Americans, and other international students who study first in Moscow first semester, then they move to California, and they can compare the views. They can study both in Russia and the United States. They get both diplomas of the universities, which have equal power both in the United States and in Russia and globally. And I invest more and more of my time in those educational efforts. And finally, I love to travel. So I guess this is my 5th time here on the island of Kauai.
Oh.
I first time came here 15 years ago, and I love this island. I feel great here every time I come here.
And you are from Moscow, or are you from a different area of Russia?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Moscow, and I'm that urban guy which loves hiking and loves escaping into the nature.
And Bruce and Cynthia, who are here with you, I consider them in the peace industry. Is that might be a fair way of saying you are also, right? Like these people that you're teaching, the young people that have experience both in Moscow and California, is the intention that they might use their experience and their knowledge in the diplomatic regions, as that would be typically the kind of work they might go into?
Yeah, it may be diplomacy, it may be work in academic institutes, it may be, maybe they will build their own NGOs, maybe some of them will work as journalists, but they will be well trained in the issues of global security and proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, which is unfortunately a very big topic these days.
So since you're bringing that up, and like with both Bruce and Cynthia who are here with you, we talked about that. That's something they're very concerned about, so I'm glad that they introduced me to you. How big of a fear is it? Like we here on Kauai and in Hawaii, we've been getting these things saying you have to have 14 days of food in your pantry so you can close the doors on our little wooden buildings to survive a nuclear war or a nuclear attack. And we don't really have any kind of place to be safe. So it's unnerving to hear that. We are learning that Korea is the threat, is what we're being told. You work in this field. What is your assessment of the potential of nuclear war with Korea or India or China or Russia? I mean, where do you see that we're at, and are we partnering well with Russia?
Well, relations between the United States and Russia are really at a very, very low stage now, which is unfortunate, which is dangerous. But having said that, may I say that fear is not necessarily that good thing to have. Soviet Union and the United States learned how to live with their nuclear arsenals for many decades. When I was a school kid, I also remembered that we were shown in Moscow a nuclear shelter because Americans can attack us and bomb us. But living with fear never helps. You need to look at the prospects and see the future of the relationship. This is why Russia and the United States, although through very, very difficult moments, learned, I hope, how to live responsibly with nuclear arsenals. But then other players come, and you mentioned North Korea. North Korea actually is neighbor of my country. Literally, we have border with North Korea. I have millions of Russians who live in the Russian Far East, knowing that its neighbor developing nuclear weapons, has nuclear weapons and has missiles. But I realize what Russia has not necessarily would be a sign of hope for people here in Kauai. In that sense, just a very clear statement, no, North Koreans do not have a capability today to have a missile attack over the state of Hawaii. No, North Koreans do not have capability today to send nuclear weapons here to this island. More likely, North Koreans in the next 4-5 years will be developing capability to reach territories of the United States such as Guam. And it may take them, both for development and for testing, maybe 6 to 8 years, if they go ahead as they do now, to develop their missiles capable to reach the state of Hawaii. So we're talking now not about 6 weeks or 6 months. We're talking 6 to 8 years. Predictions may be wrong. We should probably base the things on the worst case scenario. But even then, North Korea is a rational player. They also want to live in peace. The same like people in Kauai, the same like people in the United States. They may see it differently through the different lens. This is why it is very important now to try to solve holistically the situation in the Northeast Asia region, addressing all the situation in the Korean Peninsula to reduce the fears both of those who looking here just worried where is our shelter, but also of the North Koreans themselves. Rational player would never start nuclear war, would never start missile attack if its own security interests are also respected.
Some of the opinion of the people in our community is that our own president, President Trump, is sometimes a little reckless with his words, and it seems provocative and maybe picking a fight. We don't have as much exposure to what Vladimir Putin is taking positions on, but is the Russian government showing calm and restraint? I mean, really, I look at it, they're surrounded. They got Pakistan, Iran, both kind of coming up as players. China, Korea. How many do they got around them? Quite a few, yeah?
We have almost all
Israel.
Nuclear weapon
You're
states
surrounded.
surrounding my country.
So it's a bigger deal for you than for us.
I would say nuclear weapons should be a deal for everybody, but one should not go into any extreme of the fears. We in Russia think that North Korea issue is an important issue to be solved. You cannot just leave it like that and just happily live with nuclear weapon North Korea. But the issue, as you said, you may provoke that player, or you may engage that player, engage into diplomacy, engage into solutions, to listen also to its own interests, keeping your own interests in mind. This is what diplomacy is. With North Korea, they are scared. They are scared about US military drills around their border. Let's not forget the fact, which is not that well known, unfortunately. There were not North Koreans who first introduced nuclear weapons on the Korean Peninsula.
Who was
That
it?
were Americans, because for many, many years, tactical nuclear weapons of the United States were located in South Korea, very close to North Korea. Does it tell something? Yeah, because there is the story much larger than we sometimes get from the media. And the provocative language saying we can use all the methods against you, may it really be helpful? I doubt so. I think that more importantly is that we start addressing the interests of each other. The interest of the United States is clear. Not to get attacked, not to get any threat here, but the interest of North Korea is that they want to keep their nation, they want to keep their nation safe, not under threat of attack, not to be called any part of axis of evil, because if you are called axis of evil, you have two choices. You either give up, say, okay, take my country, take my capital, I give up, or you defend yourself. So this is where diplomats should play a very important role, and there is still a chance. It's not a military and not only a military issue.
So, when you came to Kauai, and Bruce, were you working with him here on Kauai, or you just ran into each other?
First of all, I would just say that the program that he's initiated with colleagues on our side is extraordinary. This dual degree program with Russian and American graduate students working and studying together in Moscow and in Middlebury, Monterey campus. Cynthia and I have taught there over the past year as well. And you find that's a sense of great promise, because some of the brightest students on both sides are developing these strong personal connections right now. And youth is always more open, less prejudiced, and capable of devising creative solutions. So we're building capital toward the future.
And Cynthia and you are almost grown examples of that, correct? Because you went to Moscow as a young woman and were working there, and you're helping with still this similar to what Vladimir is doing?
Well, we Bruce and I both started out as students, as exchange students in Russia in the late 70s at Leningrad, what was then Leningrad State University. And what Vladimir is describing in this program that he started and Bruce has been talking about is truly amazing, because you have the opportunity to actually begin to see the world from a completely different point of view. You begin to actually see the world from the shoes of another country, another people. And my hope with this program, I don't know of any other one like it in the world right now, is that these students who are learning and working together, they're not just going to Americans to Russia or Russians to America. These are students who are in the same classroom at the same time from these countries, these two countries, and they are building relationships, and they're planning to work, many of them in Russian-American relations and in non-proliferation for their lives. So they will have relationships over the course of decades to come, so that when they get into situations that are difficult, they already know one another. They have a relationship, a foundation, and that so much diplomacy depends on relationships and good relationships, and we need more of that right now. We don't have enough of that right now. We need people who really understand the other side from both sides. So that's what Bruce and I learned when we went there as students, and that's informed our life and work in this field. And that's what Vladimir has built this program, co-built this program for the future, for, we hope, for decades to come. It's a big sign of hope for me in the field.
So Vladimir, what is the name of your organization? I know it's PIR, but what does that stand for?
Yeah, this is actually a Russian acronym for Policy Studies in Russia. But it's also has a translation, direct translation from Russian. PIR means feast. So we always think of PIR as intellectual feast, that we have, that kind of, intellectual wow, if I may say here.
And you came to Kauai to do something at Fort Elizabeth, is that correct?
Yeah, that was a completely different part of my interest. It has nothing to do with international security, although it has something to do with US-Russian relations. Because you always learn. And when I first came here to Kauai 15 years ago, I knew very little about Russian presence on Hawaii, Kauai. And when my tourist bus stopped at Fort Elizabeth, Russian fort, and the tour guide said, the stop is optional, we can go quicker to Waimea Canyon, because this is where really interesting stuff is. I said, stop, and my 5-year-old son was with me. I said, stop, Russians want to see Russian fort. And of course we stopped and we got a very good small tour there. And this is how my interest in this place started already some time ago. But these days are Russian Americans, US citizens of Russian origin. They decided to organize a conference in Kauai commemorating 200 years of Fort Elizabeth and also 200 years of Russian flag, which had been raised over Kauai for a very short period of time, for 1 year. And I also started digging deeper, as we say, not necessarily at Fort Elizabeth per se, but also looking at that shared history of opportunity, but also of zeal. And when Russians came here, when Bostonian captains were not happy about that, that was an interesting story coming back to 200 years. That was also interesting for me to learn the issues of preservation of Fort Elizabeth here. In fact, there are 2 other Russian forts which were built in Kauai, both in their northern part of the island.
So there's Fort Alexander right next to the Princeville Hotel in
Correct.
Princeville. Where's the third one? I didn't
The
know.
third one was located on the other side, almost across Alexander, but it was called Barclay.
Okay.
But we never managed to find its remains. So there were 3 forts altogether here.
And the Russians came here mostly with trade, right? With the ships, correct? And whaling and...
Russians came here for the trade and exchange of goods. Russians at that time had Alaska as part of Russian America. Russia also had Fort Ross in its ownership in California. So the places, particularly Alaska, needed food. And this was almost ideal place to find food. But the developments came very quickly when the King Kauai
Kamali'i,
decided that Russians could be also helpful in his fight against Kamehameha. So Russians got involved almost immediately in the local geopolitics here in Hawaii. And for about a year, Russian flag was raised in Waimea, in Fort Elizabeth. Russian flag also was raised in Hanalei, but Russian Tsar, Emperor Alexander I, and this fort was named after him in Hanalei, decided not to get involved. He said, no, we don't want to deteriorate, to make worse our relations with the United States. So it was too far for Russia to get involved in this business here in Kauai politically. So Russia decided to abstain from a gift of Kauai, which was given by the Kauaian king.
Wow, I learned more than I knew on that part of the story. So thank you for coming on that, and I appreciate your time here, and that the three of you are working on a project, a film project that will be coming out. What will it be called? Do you know the name yet?
Well, it's towards stability in U.S.-Russian relations. Should be out in about March, April.
And you've made a number of films, correct?
Yes, many on the Russian, or in Russia, or in this former Soviet Union. So this is a really important time, we feel, to bring voices forward from both countries of all ages that see the real issues that we have in our relationship, but also what the real opportunities are and what the stakes are in the relationship, how important it is that no matter what our differences are, that we have shared interests that are existential threats, like the threat of nuclear war, nuclear confrontation, the threat of climate change, and things like that, that we really need to focus on those shared threats while we work on these other issues, because these are existential threats that if anything like this were to happen, it would be catastrophic for all life, and it would be the end of civilization. So we feel that we need to bring voices forward to really build bridges now at a time when so many bridges have been broken. So we're trying to do that with this film.
And so it is an honor that Kauai continues to be a place where we're really a tiny little dot on the planet, but we are a gem of an island, and where we do a lot of good conversation and a lot of good action happens here. So we're really pleased to have you here. Thank you so much for coming, and if you have any final words or thoughts for the Kauai community from your country or from your heart, we're happy to give you that opportunity to share it.
Thank you so much. I should tell you that, it's every time, and it's nothing here related to North Korea or to Russian Fort Elizabeth. Every time I come here to Kauai, every time it's very, very sad moment when I come back. But I have a lot of memories.
When you leave, you mean sad moment when you leave?
When I leave the island, when I come back home, because so many impressions. Just 2 days ago, there was a great hike I made just through Alaki swamp. I could not imagine how I could leave this island going back home without that impression. It was rainy, it was muddy, and it was great. So people who live here on the island of Kauai are definitely blessed with this beautiful nature, with this beautiful spirit. Aloha.
Aloha. Is there a word in Russian for aloha that you can teach us?
Aloha is very unique because you can say privyet, you can say любовь, you can have all different meanings. Well, probably privyet would be best when you say aloha when you say hi, but yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Aloha. Mahalo for all of you coming on.
Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Aloha.